Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us tonight are journalist and broadcaster Henry Winter and Miguel Delaney, chief football writer for The Independent. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. Familiar themes in the headlines heading into Wednesday, Thursday. Welcome to Manchester. Grealish dig over Euro axe is the big headline there. Mail back page, City ramp up war on Premier League. Grealish, Southgate was wrong to drop me for Euros. Times has the lead story, City warning over fresh legal action, but meanwhile Pep's right-hand man is leaving, though he's pictured on Pep's left hand there. The Eye has Premier League misled its members, claimed City thumbs down. England's blasé approach to series underlined by Duckett injury, that painful-looking thumb injury for Ben Duckett in the cricket. Telegraph has rivals slam City over new revolt, while UN advisor calls for return of sex testing. Mirror goes with Jack, the dad, Jack Grealish, a recent father. 7-hour summit on 10 future, and the City warn 19 Premier League clubs is misleading you over APT, associated party transactions. Nappy days, again, referencing Jack Grealish in the Star. It's summit and nothing for Eric. After that summit, no decision on Eric Ten Hag. And City take aim at Premier League again. Let's start with the Telegraph for sport. Henry, I'll come to you with this. Sam Wallace and Tom Morgan on the story. The headline, rivals slam City over, quote, new revolt. Champions stand accused of trying to run the Premier League. Legal counsel tells other 19 clubs all APT rules are void. Henry, how divided do you feel that the Premier League is at the moment?
Well, it's a pretty incendiary email/letter that Simon Cliff, City's legal counsel, sent out, effectively accusing the Premier League. Well, he did accuse them of misleading the other clubs and inaccuracies in their own take on Monday's tribunal. It was described to me, this email tonight, as someone very closely associated with the clubs, as an act of war. And this is just so damaging for football, because clearly City have a point on this. The APT rules do need rewording, tweaking, bringing up to date, bringing into line with sort of UK competition law, sports laws we've seen, whether it's with FIFA, whether it's with Leicester, all over the place. Football cannot exist away from the country's laws. But we also have to remember that the Premier League, as we see week in, week out, is an absolutely fantastic spectacle. And the behaviour of the lawyers and some owners and individuals at the Premier League as well, even though they're trying to defend their corner, is just so damaging to this brilliant sport. We've also got to remember, who does the game actually belong to? Does it belong to the owners and lawyers, or does it belong to the supporters and the players? For me, and I think all of us, anyone sane-minded in this game, it belongs to the players and the supporters. And this civil war is so damaging. No one's going to win. The only people who are going to win are the lawyers.
Yes, certainly a lot of legal action potentially in the offing in the coming weeks and months. Back page of the Times, Miguel, City warning over fresh legal action. By Matt Lawton reporting here, letter accuses Premier League of, quote-unquote, misleading other 19 clubs. How do you see it, Miguel? Is this the start of a precedent for clubs being divided, whether it's City or other clubs, or is there a sense that associated parties transaction is so fundamental that this has to be the way for this issue?
Well, I'm not sure it's a precedent in terms of kind of conflict, because I think this really just widens issues that have been there, or really kind of divisions that have been there for some time now. Most, at least in the last few years, revolving around the Manchester City hearing, which of course is framing this entire issue. And while I would agree with Henry totally the line that Henry had there, that this is an act of war and it does kind of plunge the Premier League into greater conflict, one line from this email that I think is just as significant, and Matt Lawton, who's reported a lot of details throughout this since June, but it was the words of Simon Cliff that City's position is that the APT rules are completely void and have been for 3 years due to this ruling. Because, I mean, there has been some debate over whether City actually wanted to go that far. I think that line alone reveals that this was pretty much, I suppose, or certainly reading between the lines, I think it's very fair to infer this is one of the intentions behind this legal case. And of course, it could be wrapped up into the hearing, because if you're able to start arguing about the premise of the rules, then you can set positions on that in terms of the charges. But I suppose where the real contention is that the Premier League's position is the judgment absolutely did not render the APT rules void, and actually they would see it. And I think this is not unanimous, but a fairly widespread view in legal circles from those that have gone through the entire document, that yes, while some parts of the rules, or two in particular, have to be brought into line with competition law, it actually recognised the premise of the rules is entirely in keeping with competition law, and didn't just say that, but also recognised that financial regulation in like this, and particularly APT rules, are essential to the fair running of sport and to keep some idea of competitive balance. But of course, I mean, we're pointing here to schisms and issues that have driven the schisms throughout this entire saga.
Yeah, there's this saga, there's the other saga with Manchester City. They deny, of course, any wrongdoing in the 115 charge case as well. Henry, in the back page, Premier League misled its members, claims City thumbs down. Is Ben Duckett. We'll get to that maybe in the cricket in just a second. In terms of the clubs, how difficult is the ownership models of different clubs, Henry, in perhaps being a spark for conflicts? We know that shareholder loans is another issue that's bubbling away in association with the APT issue.
Well, City have a point on shareholder loans, particularly the interest-free ones. I think that could be sorted. I mean, the Premier League think they can sort it with sort of addressing or tweaking the rules, or the owners could just transfer it into or convert it into equity. So, I think that can be addressed. But the important thing is when the clubs meet for this emergency Premier League meeting, that they actually put away their toxic vocabularies and actually just see what they can gain together. Because the Premier League is just this remarkably successful collective financially and from a footballing perspective, and they're just ripping it apart. And they're ripping it apart, and the people who are going to suffer are going to be the supporters, are going to be the players, are going to be the, sort of those of us who love going to matches and celebrating the skills of the individuals involved. And it's being wrecked by certain individuals who, look, City's owners have done some fantastic things in the east side of Manchester, and they should be celebrated, and the football should be celebrated as well. But if you're coming up with incendiary language like this, which, as Mick says, exacerbates the existing schisms, then it's just going to get worse and worse, and everyone's going to lose out. All involved, you've got to take a step back from the battlefield and just see what the long-term consequences are. Because the long-term consequences is that they're just going to ruin the game.
OK, back page of the Mail. Mike Keegan reporting City ramp up war on Premier League. Miguel, I noted that Chelsea, Newcastle and Everton were witnesses for Manchester City in the tribunal that ruled on Monday. Arsenal, Man United and Liverpool, one of 8 clubs with written support to the Premier League position. Do you feel that this next meeting for the Premier League holders, how important is it that that's a cordial and, I suppose, productive meeting?
Well, so it's next Thursday they meet, and initially they're just going to discuss 3 potential amendments. There won't be any vote taken at that. And obviously City, from everything we know tonight, I think this is a key point in Sam Wallace and Tom Morgan's piece, or their line about it, was that City are very resistant, say, to any rule that would prevent the amendment on shareholder loans being backdated. So that's where I could already get feisty. I think people already expected to get tense. But even you pointed to kind of some of the clubs that gave witness testimony there. I think that in itself reflects a very interesting issue here. And I suppose it also shows how fluid the politics can be. I mean, OK, the clubs that are seen, that either gave witness statements in support of City or are seen as sympathetic to them would be naturally Newcastle, given they're also state-linked ownership or state ownership. And the amendments were proposed after the PIF take over Newcastle. Chelsea, although now some of these amendments could potentially affect Chelsea, Everton, although the change of ownership with Everton could affect the politics there. And Villa are seen as close to City. I'd imagine that would remain the case. And Forest obviously have had their own issues with PSR cases. But beyond all that, I mean, Henry was talking there, I suppose, how it's important to take a step back. And I would completely agree with him. I think an issue, though, is whether this, if you zoom out, what we're actually seeing is essentially the inevitable consequence, really, of the Premier League having let in, and this goes beyond the last few years. This is really going back 2 decades. But it's the Premier League letting in all manner of non-football interests to own their football clubs, and that really with very different philosophical outlooks on the game. I mean, ultimately, well, state-linked ownership, they're looking at sport from political purposes and how they can use it, which often involves investment to try and glean political benefits, whereas a lot of American-influenced capitalist ownerships ultimately want to take money out of the game. There's a fundamental schism there. Some of that has been reflected in the kind of the battle lines, you would say, in this issue. And I'm not sure how that can be resolved when it gets to this depth of feeling, other than, I suppose, as Henry's alluded there, pointing to the product, which is the games themselves. But there's obviously very different views on how this should be set out. And I think it's... I do wonder, given that so many European leagues at the moment, say particularly Spain, particularly Italy, they're obsessed with the wealth of the Premier League, and they see the Premier League as kind of this uncatchable force. Well, they must be looking at this and thinking the Premier League is doing its own job of ripping itself apart.
Yep, a lot of tensions there as well. Begiristain leaving Manchester City. He's pictured on the back page of The Sun. Welcome to Manchester is the headline there, juxtaposed with Dave Brailsford and Sir Jim Ratcliffe leaving a 7-hour-long London summit. Let's touch on Manchester United, Henry. What do you make from today's meeting that has not led to a conclusion that we're aware of just yet?
Well, not a lot, really. I mean, I'm sure they had a lot to talk about. I hope they weren't watching videos of Manchester United's recent performances. I think there has to be some sympathy for Ten Hag in terms of the injuries. Maguire, the latest, I think Garnacho as well, is withdrawn from the Argentina squad. So, yeah, some sympathy for him there. He's had a horrendous run. But I think they can also look at, is the money that he is being given properly spent? £200 million in the summer. Have Manchester United improved? No. £600 million in his reign. Have they improved? No. OK, they've won 2 trophies, but can you see an identity? And if they're sitting around the table and they can say, we can see an identity and we can see a development in Manchester United under Ten Hag, then fantastic. I mean, it's, that's pretty impressive. But what they can, if they are going to get rid of Ten Hag, that doesn't solve all the problems. The problems have been, the drifting of the leadership, whether it's in the dressing room, whether it's in the dugout, that has been going on for a long time. The Glazers are ultimately responsible, and that's up for Ineos and Ashworth and Brailsford and Ratcliffe to address. But the players also have to take responsibility. So you can get rid of Ten Hag, but the culture remains. That's been a problem for a long time. The underperformance of the players, may remain. They have to start taking responsibility. Everyone, in whatever job you do, you have to take individual responsibility. So there's an individual and collective failure there. So look, there are many problems they're going to have to look at beyond the manager.
A lot for Manchester United to try and unpack. Miguel, is something that perhaps counts in Ten Hag's favour, the influence he seems to have had in recruitment? Would it be difficult to sack him with so many new players?
Of course, the flip side of that would be Sunday's lineup, which I know he got the 0-0 result, which possibly saved his job. But there was obviously bafflement. I mean, especially given, say, and this is where you kind of come to the confusion about all this. So throughout last season, as Henry's mentioned there, Ten Hag did have an injury crisis. I think that is a very fair caveat in assessing last season. But one of the reasons that was painted as such a problem, say, was because he didn't have Alessandro Martinez, who was seen as key to his tactics, and it was almost seen as a negative, or at least, an issue, that he had to bring in Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire. And now on Sunday, where he's trying to save his job, he actually jettisons the 2 Ajax centre-halves who he knows, Martinez and now Matthijs de Ligt, who was key to the best achievement of his career, the 2019 run with Ajax, and brings back in Maguire and Evans. And I think that's where this is baffling. And we've all heard, I suppose, the lines about leaving 360 million worth of recruitment on the bench. I mean, just from, I suppose, trying to glean what's going to happen at Manchester United. And at the moment, we just don't know. But the words we keep hearing are, process-led in terms of these sort of discussions. That is essentially Ratcliffe and the leadership team around him trying to put out as much evidence as possible for every potential scenario. And I do wonder whether just the moment, and I wouldn't make any predictions on this, given how it's gone so far, but they just maybe don't feel there is a suitable candidate that can step in. And it's why I think the preference has been to persevere with Ten Hag. Now, on one level, I think it is worth stressing, whatever about kind of the merit of a manager losing his job, the argument whether he should lose his job, it's hard not to have some human sympathy for Ten Hag, given this is the second time he's gone through this in a year. But of course, that raises another issue, which is the pressures involved with managing Manchester United, which I think is part of selecting a potential candidate.
Yeah, he's confident apparently of being there for the Brentford game, or assuming you will be on the 19th of October. Henry, is one complexity here that maybe the season's already gone in terms of the league, and what is achievable, what is salvageable for any manager coming in at this stage, given the distance between United and the top teams?
Well, I think at the start of the season, no one seriously thought that Manchester United would challenge for the league. I think the limit of their ambitions was to try and get a Champions League position, but they're 14th at the moment, so that's looking pretty distant. But the ethos of Manchester United should be about fighting, and they should actually absolutely try and sort of pursue and get as high up as the table as possible. I mean, Mig's right. I mean, there has to be some sympathy for Ten Hag, but you also have to consider that any other club with an impatient fan base, and Manchester United's fan base have just been unbelievably patient. I'm talking about the fans in the ground, the supporters who go home and away, and they have supported the team, they've supported the shirt, even though many of them have got issues with Ten Hag. They've done the Sir Alex Ferguson thing and backed the manager. Any other club, he would have been run out of town by now. So, you've got to think of the fans in all these. But look, Mig's right. I mean, if you get rid of him, who do you bring in? I mean, Ruud van Nistelrooy, short term. Thomas Tuchel comes with baggage. Gareth Southgate can't get a team over the line. Graham Potter, has he got the personality to deal with probably the most scrutinised managerial position in the country after England's? It's all very well saying let's run him out of town, but who is there? So they're bigger issues than Ten Hag here.
Welcome back. You are watching Backpages tonight, and welcome back to Henry Winter and Miguel Delaney. Let's go to the Mirror then, as promised. Jack the Dad, the headline. Proud new father, Grealish jokes. Boss will have more sleepless nights than me picking his team. It's a fascinating interview, Miguel, isn't it? Wasn't happy about being omitted from the Euros, but with turning 29, becoming a dad, do you sense we're in for a big final flourish to the career of club and country of Jack Grealish?
Well, it used to always be one of Fergie's lines, wasn't it, basically, that he wanted basically his players to settle down and have kids as quickly as possible because they felt to give them responsibility. I wonder how Guardiola feels about that. But yeah, it might change, or it'll cause a maturation in Jack Grealish. But certainly, I thought it was quite impressive the way he spoke about the Euros. It's always a great thing with Grealish, how willing he is to just be candid. He's a great speaker in that sense. And while I don't think he would have necessarily changed the end result, because I think there were probably bigger issues there, especially when how the final went. I think he would have changed maybe the tone of England's tournament, especially given a lot of it was there was I suppose a lack of fantasy through it, bar individual moments, and I think Grealish could very much have helped that. And it was a recurring theme during the Euros that the squad basically missed him, whatever about his talent, which is exceptional, also his personality.
Absolutely, yeah. He was missed in the summer at times, wasn't he, Henry? It seemed for a different option. You've been with the England camp. How important is Grealish there, and what are the big storylines that you're keeping across this week? Well,
the fitness of Harry Kane. I think England and the Football Association have a responsibility towards Bayern Munich. I mean, despite Harry Kane wanting to play every second of every training, let alone every game, I think they've got to use him sparingly. And Dominic Solanke came out and spoke well today. He's obviously got a chance of his second cap, first one since Brazil 7 years ago. So good to see him. But Mick's right about Jack. The personality is absolutely key to him. And first, congratulations to him and his partner on their new signing. But Grealish should have gone to the Euros. I mean, it was crazy at the time. Everyone said it. Just, particularly with an expanded squad, you could have taken Grealish, brought him off the bench. He could have won a free kick, a penalty. He could have just terrorised the fullback and created a chance for Kane. So that was bemusing. But Carsley absolutely worships him. So we'll see a lot of Jack Grealish.
Dominic Solanke speaking as well, Miguel. I just wonder, is that an area of concern for England and the incredible talent they've got in lots of areas of the squad, the eventual heir apparent to Harry Kane? Is that looking up for grabs at the moment?
Yeah, obviously that's been a recurring theme. And actually, just touching on something Henry mentioned there, I suppose it almost was an issue for England for a while. And this was a Spurs issue as well, that Kane was so willing to play every game. It was actually difficult to bet another striker in just because of that. I don't think it's necessarily as much of an issue with Carsley, because I think the way he plays is something closer to the Guardiola approach, where he would be more willing to play a false nine or just change the array of options in attack. And also why I think even someone like Solanke may not even necessarily be used in the same way as Kane. I think that does point to something that is quite exciting about England's games at the moment, which is the variety of options that Carsley is willing to go with.
Absolutely. We've got about 20 seconds. Henry Cole Palmer, England Men's Player of the Year. Do you agree with that? Could he be one of England's all-time greats?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's got the ability, and in Bellingham in second place and Bukayo Saka in third, England are blessed for attacking talents.
England certainly are. Henry, Miguel, thank you very much for now. Blessed with your talents this evening. Really appreciate it.